This video, we are going to be introduced to the ever helpful TVM solver. TVM is time value money, and this is a hugely helpful calculator that will basically do most of our finance calculations so we can avoid using some complex formulas. That basically any type of account that has interest applied at regular intervals, if we're depositing money at regular amounts, if we're making loan payments at regular amounts, this is the calculator for us. Now, there are sort of two forms that I'm not really going to talk about the first one, but just so that you know it's out there. There is an application on all your TI-84 calculators that basically will do the same thing as the one that I'm going to show you that's online. So we're going to be using one. The link's right here in the note sheet. There's a link on Canvas. There's a link in your Nearpod lesson. So in order to use the TVM calculator, what's going to be really important is that you can identify the parts of the problem, sort of what each of the variables represent, and then what are you looking for. If you can correctly identify these, then you're going to be able to use this calculator no problem. It's a lot about how do we interpret the results that come out, less so than, the math calculations themselves. So in this case, I'm just going to quickly sort of go through some of these variables with you so you get a sort of sense of what they are, and then we'll dive right into a familiar looking problem. All right, so the very first thing in your calculator is going to be the end value, and the end value is your number of payments. So keep in mind, this is actually going to be found by taking sort of the time of your investment, and then it's going to be multiplied by your sort of number of compounding periods or number of payments per year. So I'm going to put payments per year. So it's like, how often are you earning money? How often are you putting things in the account to give you sort of that total number? Now, a new change here is my interest rate this time is going to actually be in its percent form. So we do not, and I stress, do not turn our rate into a decimal. And then we have our present value. So that's sort of the amount we invest. When we look at regular deposits, this is going to be an amount of 0. When we have lump sum deposits, like we're going to start with, or our typical compound interest problems, then we have a present value. Payment is an out-of-pocket amount. Therefore, we're going to be putting in this number of negative. Think about it as like, I am inputting money into this account, so I now have less money in my pocket. You're always going to have to sort of have a money flow relationship here. Either your payment amount is negative or your future value is negative, but something's going to be negative. I find it easiest to just make sort of the case of the types of problems we're looking at, we're just going to make our payment amount negative. If you're not sure you did it right, always stop and think, does my answer make sense? And that's going to be a good sort of like check. Yeah, that makes sense. It was supposed to be negative. All right, FV is the amount sort of you get out of your account at the end. And then our PY and CY, we're going to, in our case, we're simplifying things. These will always be the same. P/Y is how many payments you're making per year. How often are you inputting money into the account? C/Y is actually cycles per year. So that's like basically like how many times is it compounding per year, which is different technically than payments per year. You could have, for example, in reality, credit card loans compound daily, but you only pay typically monthly. So often those two things would be different. For the simplification of this class, we will always make them the same. All right, so let's look at an example, and this example should seem a little bit familiar. We're going back to Trevor and his $6,000. So I want to show you how you could use this TVM solver instead of the compound interest formula. So it can be used with sort of what we will call in the coming sort of lesson our lump sum deposits. So he deposited $6,000 into an account, and it earned this much interest. It compounded monthly, and I want to know after 10 years. So I'm going to sort of talk about what I put into this calculator, and then we're going to go try it out. So starts with the n value here. So n is going to be the number of years times how often it compounds. So in here, and you can, the cool thing about these calculators is I'm actually going to type it directly in like that, and then it's going to do the math for me. And that would be the number of sort of times that the investment compounded over the course of those 10 years. Now, our interest rate is actually going to get put in as the percent, so we don't turn it into a decimal here. Now, this one's going to have a present value because in the case of this, he has one, and what we'll often refer to this as lump sum deposit. And his lump sum deposit is at $6,000. And since that's money out of your pocket initially, we're going to make that number negative. So sort of whatever money I'm putting in is going to be my negative value in this calculator. I don't have regular payments. That's what the PMT is in this investment. I want to find this. This is my unknown. So I'm going to put a little question mark there. And then payments per year, cycles per year, it's monthly. So it's 12. Being able to identify all of these is something you're going to need to do every sort of problem like this. So if you are using this calculator, the work that you would show me is what you entered into your calculator. This allows me to sort of figure out what you did wrong and where you might have made a mistake if you do mess up. All right, so let's flip over to our TVM solver now. So that you'll notice on this website that I've linked for you, it does remind you what each of the variables represent. So you don't have to have that memorized, so it's nice that it's there. And it really is just a matter of plugging everything in. So I'm gonna start up here, and for n, I'm gonna have 10 times 12. And you'll notice, it multiplied those out for me. And then I'm gonna put in my 0.85. and my negative $6,000. I don't know my future value, but I do need to update my payments per year. And I double check that all my numbers sort of match what I want them to. And then I pick the button of what I'm solving for. So I'm solving for future value. So I'm going to click that solve for future value, and ta-da, it pops right up. $6,532.11, and that number should look familiar because it's the same number we got out of that compound interest formula. So this gives us a way of dealing with compound interest problems without having to, without using the formula. So that's an example of using compound interest in order to use the TVM calculator.